Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. This is Big Girl Diary. Okay, woo, I got a big one. And this right here is the P. Diddy trial. I have been following it, but I've been having a hard time finding content creators who are there. They got boots on the ground and just trying to find the right content creator that's putting out the factual stuff, lacking the bias. And I gotta say, it's hard because you got pro P. Diddy and pro government, which I'm like, pro government? Okay, that's funny, pro government. But however, it is what it is. But I did find a content creator that strictly went on the evidence. And I'm like, okay, great. All right. So I looked at Armand Wiggins, and he was on, I think, what was it, NBC News, and giving his aspect of what he believed it was. And other content creators are actually getting airtime on mainstream news. And I'm like, and I see a lot of people doing a lot of great work, and they're fortunate to have support and backing, and I think that is great. One day I will get there. One day I will, if I can stay out of trouble and stop getting into the algorithm outer space. But that's neither here or there. Now, I took painstaking time to transcribe because people don't like others using their content creation, and I understand that and I respect that. So I typed everything out, and oof, painstaking. But as a content creator, you got to get out there and do what you need to do for your subscribers. Okay. So I know there's a number of you who are interested in this case, and I just want to give it to you, and I'm going to try very hard not to lean, because P. Diddy is an easy person not to like, especially if you live in a DC area, DMV area. Yeah, but like, boo. But again, I digress. All right, so here are the notes. And this was taken June 4th, so I did that. And this is Armand Wiggins' report and what he was saying on his live stream. So Bryanna Bongolon was, and I know I'm killing her last name, she was on a stand, and she was gave her information to the prosecution, and then was crossed by the defense. And oh, this answers so many questions. And I'm sitting here thinking, did Bryanna actually help the state? I don't think so. She more so helped P. Diddy, in my opinion, based on what you see, right? So I'm like, this is very, very interesting. Let me put this a little lighter. Okay. So it says Bryanna was on a stand, and she was crossed by the government first, and they were asking her a lot of questions. So I try to keep up with what Armand was saying because he gives great commentary. So I'm trying to separate the commentary to what was stated in the courtroom. So here, Bryanna was giving her employment, and she said that she worked at Young and Restless between 2012 and 13, and at that point is where she met Cassie. But at that time, she was with P. Diddy. So and there she was a graphic designer, and also worked at Diamond Supply Company, where Cassie had started her clothing line. And it's very interesting because Rihanna comes into it, then Beyonce comes into it, and I'm like, this is quite interesting. What are they? What? And so that's where Cassie started her brand, her women's clothing brand line. And there's a lot said, and there was reports said that how P. Diddy kept her from growing and flourishing as her as a woman and having freedom and autonomy for herself. So just keep that right there in mind, okay? So I put commentary. So she talked about Cassie and her relationship with P. Diddy, and she said it was volatile. Bryanna said it was volatile, and she thought she didn't like him. So Cassie started saying, hey, Bryanna, I want you to meet my boyfriend. I want you to meet him. He's a really good guy. And Brianna's like, are we talking about the same person? When I see you, you have one black eye, two black eyes, a right black eye, left black eye, both black eyes. Do you really? I don't like him. I don't want to meet him. No, I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want to meet him. No, nothing, right? And Cass kept saying, no, I want you to meet him. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. So finally, it took about a year of, and I'm going to slightly say, it took about a year for her to meet P. Diddy, and that was more so of Bryanna's doing, not wanting to meet him, but she finally did at Cassie's place. Now, keep in mind, Cassie had apartments. She lived in very expensive areas, and P. Diddy provided a life for her. Now, remember, P. Diddy, she did not live with P. Diddy. P. Diddy paid for her apartments. She had apartments in New York City, LA, outside of LA, London. I believe she had places in London as well, because P. Diddy had places all over the world. So did Cassie. So she said she saw Cassie with the black and blue eyes, and she always was upset, but she wound up meeting P. She wound up meeting him, P. Diddy. Cassie begged Bryanna to meet him, and then she finally did what I said. And they hung out at Cassie's Los Angeles apartment. So these are the questions. Westmoreland got straight to the point, and she said, and she got straight to it. She said, did you and Cassie do rugs together? And Bryanna said, yes. She said, what kind of rugs did you do? She said the usual: weed on the grass, hand cane, kettle, the mine, and the usual stuff. So Westmoreland said, who would you be around? Bryanna said, me, Rob Holiday, and others. Then she said, Bryanna posted an Instagram post of Cassie on her Instagram, and Diddy called up Cassie and questioned her about it. Cassie, and this is Bryanna recalling this, Cassie said that she went shopping with Bryanna, and Diddy texted Cassie every place where she'd been. This is what Bryanna's saying. And Bryanna kind of freaked out because he had her clocked her exact location. Every place where she went, he had written down. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Quite interesting much. Quite interesting much. So let me bring that up. I'm just checking to make sure. So Westmoreland said, asked Bryanna, how about staying in asked Bryanna about her staying in Cassie's apartment. She asked her these questions. Where did you sleep? Bryanna said, I slept on a balcony, on the couch, on the bed. I'm thinking, on the balcony? Okay. What defense asked, have you seen any violence between Cassie and P. Diddy? Bryanna said, Diddy banged on a door and somehow he got in and he came and threw a at Cassie. Okay, imagine this. You're there. Hey girl, how you doing? Boom, 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 boom. You answer the door. Boom, 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 boom. Coming. Right? So Westmoreland said, what did Cassie do? Bryanna said, well, Cassie picked up the and threw it back at him. Oh my goodness. Wait a minute. I'm not laughing at that. I'm just imagining. Threw it back, and Diddy would leave. Diddy would leave, and then things would go back to normal. How do you get back to normal after knife play? Boom, boom, boom. Bryanna defense said Diddy would come into the apartment and throw it at Cassie, and Cassie it back. Bryanna said yes. Westmoreland said, did anyone call the police? Defense said, yeah, no. Westmoreland said, what did you do? Why did you not call the police? Bryanna said, she did not call the police because she was scared of Puff Daddy. I'm like, oh, she went way back. Westmoreland's defense said, have you ever seen Cassie with bruises and black and blue marks on her? Bryanna said, I FaceTimed Cassie one time and Cassie didn't say anything. They were FaceTiming on the phone. And she didn't say anything, but she panned the phone over to her like this, showed her face, and she had two black eyes. Defense said, what did you say? Bryanna said, I said nothing. Defense said, what did Cassie say? Bryanna said, nothing. They looked at each other, and Cassie just looked around and hung up the phone. This is commentary. This is what he was saying. He said, remember when Deontay said that it was Cassie's 29th birthday party, and P. Diddy wanted to do an FO with him, and Cassie didn't want to go? Westmoreland got into the questioning about this right here. So Cassie wanted to do karaoke with her friends, but it was her 29th birthday, and P. Diddy's like, I want an FO. Come on, I do everything for you. I only want one thing, just one thing, and that's an FO. Right? And so, you know, P. Diddy kept after her, and she's like, no, they got into, had some words. She's like, no. He's like, yes, no, yes, no, yes. So they got back to her apartment where he was still saying yes, no. And then eventually, after they had their argument, she agreed to go. But however, no one knew until they looked over the balcony and saw Cassie and Diddy in a golf cart going towards the FO. So I'm like, wow, okay. She left her own 29. You only turn 29 once. You turn every number once. So she wound up going. So Westmore, defense asked her other questions because Bryanna wasn't giving enough information. So she was like, woman, better talk, right? So she said, were you subpoenaed to testify today? Bryanna said yes. Defense said, did you have an order to testify? Bryanna said yes. Defense said, do you have an order to protect you? She said that no. Wait a minute. She went on to say, and not Bryanna. So not that okay. It only protects you if you're lying. I thought that Miss Westmore wanted her to tell her everything. So that's a little cloudy, and I wish I would have spent a little bit more time on that, or back when I was transcribing. So forgive me. So she says, you're holding back. What did P. Diddy do? The line of questioning changed to this. Did P. Diddy ever provide you rugs? Bryanna said yes. Defense said, what kind of rugs did he provide you with? Bryanna said, hand cane, kettle, mind, and some G. It's something like ecstasy in the sky. Miss Ward, Defense said, have you ever seen Diddy do rugs? She said yes. Defense said, what rugs did you see him do? Bryanna said, kettle, mine, G, and ecstasy. Defense said, did you do rugs without Diddy? Bryanna said yes. We did rugs once a week. I found that interesting. Very interesting. Defense said, what kind of rugs did you do with Cassie? She said, Bryanna said, we did weed in the grass, hand cane, and kettle in the mine. And the kettle in the mine, keep mind on that, because that right there plays a big part towards the end. Defense said, would you have, who would have the rugs? And Bryanna said, we would have rugs together. And this is, and the commentary was a commentary. Cassie would pay her for the rugs. Okay, that's important. Defense said, would you sell rugs to Cassie? Bryanna said yes. Commentary. At this point, they both became rug addicts. They would get tore up out of their minds. Bryanna had the rugs and Cassie had the cash, and they'd get bonkers out of the mind. Okay, so Bryanna answers the question, and she said they were doing rugs and they wanted to stop doing rugs because they want to be better people, and that's a good thing. Let me see if anybody has any questions. All right. If you have any questions, I can't see. I'm looking at another program. And so Defense said, what did you do to stop doing rugs so you could be better people? And Bryanna said, well, we try to cook. I thought that was strange, but hey, whatever helps people. We cooked instead of getting high. It was hard to get sober because there was always rugs around. Defense said, have Diddy ever threatened you? Bryanna said, yes, one time in Malibu. We were at a photo shoot. Defense said, where was the photo shoot? Now, this is the commentary. He was talking. He said there was a house on the beach, and in the backyard was the beach. Now, they have a house on the beach, and you have the backyard, and the whole beach is the backyard. It's a huge area. So it was so big in space. So Bryanna said, we are in the backyard, and Diddy came behind her, or became behind her, and said, he's the devil, and I'll eliminate you. I'm like, whoa, you're just sitting there like, you're like, I'm the devil, and I'll eliminate. I'm the devil, and I'll eliminate you. I mean, whoa, what kind of wild stuff is that? I'm like, oh wow, okay, wow. And so Defense said, what did you say? Bryanna said, I was so high that I didn't even stress it. Wow, okay. She said, when you're on that many rugs, you are just confident. I'm sorry. She confident, so she was so high that she continued in confidence. It didn't even faze her. She continued to stay and hang out with Cassie and everybody. She didn't even know. She didn't even know why she stayed. She was just so high. And that's a dangerous place to be, to where you spend all your time bonkers out of your mind and somebody says, I'm the devil and I'm going to eliminate you. I mean, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That right there is just horrifying. Let me see if I have any questions. Okay. Okay. Defense said, what were you thinking? Bryanna said, I wasn't thinking, I was high. Defense said, was P. Diddy high? Bryanna said, I think so. I think so. Well, I don't know. And so they took a lunch break, and then, and this is where they start talking about the balcony. Now, pay close attention because this is quite interesting, and there's a lot to this back on the end during the cross, right? Bryanna said, she was taken in a view, and they were at Cassie's house. And P. Diddy was banging on the door again. Boom, 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 boom. Out of nowhere, he came behind her. He walks up behind her and grabs her by her chest like this, right? Grabs her by her chest. And then he lifts her up by her chest. And she goes up by her chest. And then he has her on the balcony. She has her feet on the balcony, and she's trying to push back. All right, this is what the commentary is, what he's talking about. And lifted her up and held her by her waist area while her feet were on the bar of the balcony. Told her, "You know what you effing did, B? You know what you ever did, B?" So that was what he was saying. That's what she said to the government when she testified, and she has immunity for her testimony, right? So she goes, "You know what you effing did?" And Cassie lived on the 17th floor. So she said she was so scared because her feet were on the railing and she was trying to push backwards, but she was so high. Remember, she was high. She had that confidence, right? So defense says, how long were you up like that? Bryanna said, she said, as many times as you could say, I know what the F you did, B. I know what the F you did, B. And he said it 3 times. So she said about 15 seconds, 10, 15 seconds. When he was done, he grabbed her and flung her onto the furniture, and he threw her backwards, and she hit the furniture, and she hurt her leg. She had bruises, her back, everything hurt. So a defense said, was Cassie out there? Bryanna said, well, she was on, Cassie was on the balcony. She stood in disbelief, and she said that, she said, did you just hang her over the balcony? Cassie said that, her friend is here. And P. Diddy just walked out and left. Bryanna said that she just got up, shook it off, and went the hell home. All she wanted to do was to go home, to get into a shower and relax. And she looked down, and she had a bruise. She had bruises everywhere. She had severe pain in her neck, and she said it felt like she got into a car accident. Now, she slept over Cassie's house, but she had her own place. So she spent more time at Cassie's house because she was able to get rugs, and they, were partying once a week, allegedly. But then she started spending more time over. Commentary. this is a difference between Bryanna. Okay, Bryanna and Mia. Mia is the was her pseudonym name. Bryanna had photos, but Mia didn't. She just said what happened, but Bryanna brought in, okay, I got a bruise here, I got a hole in my leg. So she was able to show. And you know, he was saying that Bryanna was way more credible than Mia. So defense said, did you take any medicine? Bryanna said she was in a lot of pain. They told her to go to the doctors, but she didn't want to go. So she was told to go to a chiropractor. So she went to get a neck brace, and the chiropractor said to her, what happened? What happened? So she said she got scared and that she paid the bill and she got her medicine and left. I'm like, okay, that's okay. But that right there, it clears it up later on. Defense said, were you in a lot of pain after that? Did you really, really hurt? Bryanna said, to be honest with you, I was on so many drugs that I didn't feel anything. Just like she felt pain. And so then she said, well, when would you feel pain? Bryanna said, well, I would feel pain when I was sober. Okay, that makes sense. Defense said, did you hear from Diddy? Bryanna said, yes. Sometime later, Diddy called her on FaceTime, and he looked at her and put his hands on. He did this. You're on FaceTime. He's like, look. He's like, she said he was doing that. He said he put his hands on his head in disbelief. A couple of times he looked in the camera, and Bryanna said to him that she don't want. She's like, look, I don't want any problems out of you, Diddy. And Diddy hung up the phone. Commentary. After the balcony, she tried to be cool and hang out with Diddy again. Okay. They were still hanging out. Now, when you're an addict, you could push somebody off the balcony and they'll get up. You could, and they'll come back a couple of days later to come back for some rugs. They have a different mindset. So don't try to make sense of her behavior, because it will never make sense at all. It will never make sense. So she said, defense said, when was the last time you hung out with Cassie and Diddy after the balcony situation? Bryanna said, the last time I hung out with Cassie and Diddy was after January 1st, 2018. And defense said, well, that's a specific date. Bryanna said, she said that she tattooed that on her neck. A defense said, why did you tattoo it on your neck? Bryanna said she wanted to make a commitment to herself to get sober, that it was the last time I'm ever going to go back. That was the last time I was with Diddy and Cassie. So defense said, what happened? And Bryanna said that they were in one hotel, and Diddy and Cassie and Bryanna went in an 8-hour ketamine, and they went into a ketamine hole for 8 hours. Oh my goodness. I mean, just now, I don't know what that is. I don't know what the effects are. Well, no, you'll learn what the effects are. And 8 hours of it. And in commentary, Armand said that he didn't know what a ketamine hole was, but he thought that that when Cassie and Diddy, after when Bryanna left, that Cassie and Diddy had an FO there at the hotel amongst themselves after when Bryanna left the hotel. Okay, so the Ben said, "Why did you quit? Were Did you quit or were you sober?" And Bryanna said, "It wasn't easy, not at first." The defense said, "Did you stay sober?" She said, "No, not at first." Um, defense said, "Are you sober today?" Bryanna said, "Yes." Defense said, "How was your relationship with Cassie?" Bryanna said, "Me and Cassie are cool." Defense said, "Did you talk to Cassie about the lawsuit?" This is where it gets interesting. Bryanna said, "Yes." Uh, Cassie uh, Cassie named her in the lawsuit when Cassie was filing for a lawsuit, and Bryanna called her up and said and told her that her information was wrong. She told Cassie that it was not, whatever incident had happened, it was not at the hotel. The dates were wrong, and Tiffany was not there. And I thought that was interesting. So the commentary, Cassie asked if she could put her in the name her in the lawsuit, but Bryanna said no, she didn't want to be named in her lawsuit. But it was interesting because Bryanna started her lawsuit, I think, before or during or after Cassie started hers. It was so undercover. So defense said, what was Cassie's response? She did not. What is Cassie's response? She didn't remember what happened because she was so high. Is it what was it got kind of blurry to her? And the defense was just simply asking questions. And Bryanna met, and this is commentary because he sort of breaks off, and he said Bryanna met with the government, and she had not talked to the government about your testimony on the balcony incident. And so Westmore defense said, "Did you talk to Cassie about your testimony?" Bryanna said no, but they were out. But defense said, "Did you meet with the government to talk about Cassie?" Bryanna said, "I didn't talk to the government about the balcony information." And defense said, "Did you talk to the government about the latest effect or the latest events of the balcony incident?" And Bryanna said yes, and she's paranoid. I'm just like, okay. And defense said, "What kind of paranoia is it?" She said, "Sometimes when I go to the house, I'll kick the door in and I'll start screaming." So it's like you kick the door and oh, this, oh Lord. So the commentary is this: she goes to the door of her house and she jumps back, and then she kicks the door. She kicks the door in, and then she starts screaming. And then she says she has nightmares and night terrors. She said she had a nightmare last week. Bryanna also goes to a lawyer. She goes to a civil lawyer. Now she got a civil lawyer to sue Diddy in 2024. The old lawyer wrote a demand letter asking for a crazy amount of money, and the information in the lawsuit and the demand letter were wrong. So she no longer has Tyrone Blackburn, who messed up her lawsuit. So a lot of this information that came out was from Tyrone Blackburn, kind of him like sprucing things up, like what's his name? The other lawyer that Cassie used to sue Diddy, and now everybody, and he said he had 120 potential clients to sue Diddy who had lawsuits, and he's just checking out the merit. can't think of his name at this very second, but Tony Blackburn was the lawyer who said that Diddy was the one who grabbed her by the chest and put her up and 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 dangled her feet over the balcony. That right there is that is what Blackburn said, and she wrote in the letter, and that was what she wrote in the letter. And Bryanna said that all of that was incorrect. She believed that Tyrone asked for $200 million. Who knows? And she tried, and so she fired Tyrone Blackburn. And more commentary. Rob Holiday FaceTimed Bryanna from Diddy's backyard. That was when, or Cassie's backyard. That was when they were having a photo shoot there. So she hired a new lawyer. So defense said, did you accept Diddy's offer? Bryanna declined. She declined his offer. Defense said, did you speak to Rob Holiday again? She said no. Defense said, did your new attorney help you file a lawsuit? Bryanna said yes. Defense said, so what are you suing for? Bryanna said, I'm looking for damages for the amount of $10 million. Ooh. We have a YouTuber who got sued for $4 million by Cardi B. Woo! Okay. Now, this is where fireworks begins. So Westmore, she gets straight into it. Westmoreland gets straight into it. She says, do you have immunity, right? What does immunity mean to you? You testified. Bryanna said, if you talk, then if you talk, then you are protected. If you lie, then you lose it. Then you lose it. So Westmoreland said, well, who gets to determine if you lie? Bryanna said, the prosecution. She says, okay, let's move on. Commentary. She says, let's be clear. Commentary. There is no way of knowing. There's no way of the defense really truly knowing if she's lying, if she calls her out on a lie, because she could be saying what the prosecution, the prosecution wants her to say, because she's up there, she got immunity, and if they want a sort of slant, like Fannie Willis wanted a slant, then that's what you're going to do, slant. So is it true or not? So it's really hard to tell, basically, what the Miss Westmore was saying. Okay, so Miss Westmore says, let's be clear. You started off making $75,000 working with Cassie at Creative Directors, right? You said that you met Cassie in a studio apartment for a photo shoot in just a t-shirt store. And is that the moment you knew that Cassie was comfortable around you? Bryanna said, true. Miss Westmoreland said, is that the time you start spending a lot of time with Cassie, and you would be at her house all the time, lying in bed, sleeping on a balcony, sleeping on a couch every day? Bryanna said, true, we spent a lot of time together. Now remember, she said that they only spent time once a week, but here they're spending every day together, and she's sleeping over. So Miss Westmoreland said, is it true that you were friends and you went shopping and getting your hair done and going to parties? Bryanna said, I don't go to parties, I party. And it is the way you're asking the question. So she's like, she doesn't just go to parties. No. There's a difference between going to parties, like you're going out, places and you dance and do this all this other stuff, having parties. But she means that I party, meaning I just get high, right? That's the party that she does. Westmoreland says, you party. And Bryanna said, true. Uh, Westmoreland said, rugs. Did you and Cassie do a lot of rugs? Bryanna said, yes. Cassie said, Westmoreland said, Cassie asked you the first night, right? Do you get high? Wow. Cassie said, hey, do you get high? Bryanna said, yes. Westmoreland said, and from that day on, you and Cassie were getting high all of the time. Bryanna said, yes. Miss Westmoreland said, I know you mentioned a few other rugs, so I want to know, I want to go into a few more, like weed. Yes. Well, what does it make you do? Or how does it make you feel, I guess? And Bryanna said, well, it makes me hungry. Miss Westmoreland said, edibles? She says, yes, we did edibles. Westmoreland said, well, did you do Cohan cane? Said, I remember you said Cohan cane makes you feel confident. When he was hanging her over the balcony and she stayed and no, he came behind her and said, I'm the devil and I'm going to eliminate you. I'm not scared. I have confidence. Westmoreland said, ketamine, how does that make you feel? Bryanna said, it opens your mind. Now, remember I said earlier about remember Kettle Man, to remember that? And it says it opens up your mind. Sometimes that could be dangerous. Westmoreland said, ecstasy, how does that make you feel? She said, it makes you feel loose and uplifting. Westmoreland said, and Molly? Bryanna said, no. Westmoreland said, remember when you said that you all did Molly all the time? And I asked if you and Cassie did Molly. She said, yes. So she's not telling the truth. You know, she got to pull it out of her. Westmoreland said, so G, please tell us, what is that? Bryanna said, G makes you feel like that you're on alcohol. Okay. Westmoreland said, is it true that you said that G makes you feel feel like alcohol and horny? Bryanna said, true. Westmoreland said, isn't it true that you and Cassie did acid together? Oh my God. Bryanna said, yes. Westmoreland said, Percocets? She said, yes. I did it. I don't like it. It made me throw up. And Westmoreland said, Vicodin? Bryanna said, yes. It isn't. Yes. Isn't that a pain medication? You're doing something. Okay. Okay. Westmoreland said, I asked you if you did Vicodin. And Bryanna said, I did Vicodin, but I don't know if Cassie did. She said, Westmoreland, Cocoa Puffs. Cocoa Puff. What? And Bryanna said, yes. So Westmoreland said, please tell everyone what Cocoa Puffs is. Bryanna said, Cocoa Puffs is when you roll a blunt and you poke holes in it, and then you sprinkle hand cane in the holes into the blunt. Westmoreland says, so what does that do? Bryanna said, well, it gives you everything weed gives you, and it gives you the excitement of the cocaine. Cocaine. Westmoreland said, did it develop into a serious drug problem? Bryanna said, yes, it did. Let me check to see if you have any questions. Okay. Westmoreland said, Where did the rugs, were you doing rugs before you met Diddy? Commentary. It is suggesting that Bryanna and Cassie were doing rugs before P. Diddy came into the picture. And that was the part because Cassie said that that Diddy introduced her to rugs. She didn't know anything about it, but he introduced it to her. Listen to this. So Miss Westmoreland said, so you sold Cassie rugs on a weekly basis. Westmoreland said, have you ever seen Cassie do pills? Bryanna said, yes. Westmoreland said, is it true that you brought Cassie 100 pills? Bryanna said, yes. Westmoreland said, why did you do that? Bryanna said, yes, I was nervous. Westmoreland said, did you give her, why did you give it to her? Bryanna said, because they're hers. Commentary. Cassie was so high, she had Xanax, Vicodin, and Percocet. Westmoreland said, isn't it true that you sent Cassie to different drug dealers? Bryanna said, yes. Westmoreland said, is it true that you sent Cassie that isn't it true that you sent Cassie to drug dealers? Bryanna said, I don't remember. Huh, okay. Westmoreland said, what are their names, the drug dealers' names? And Brown was like, I don't know. So she goes, Ray J? You sent Cassie to get rugs from Ray J? You know that name? Bryanna said, no, I don't remember that name, no. And Westmoreland said, who is Ray J? Didn't you tell the government that you sent Cassie to get rugs from a dealer named Ray J? And Bryanna said, I am not sure. Westmoreland said, well, who's Ray J? Bryanna said, it sounds like that singer guy, but I don't know. Westmoreland said, okay. Bryanna and Bryanna said, I don't know if that's him, the singer guy. Westmoreland said, do you know the t-shirt line you and Cassie had that did not work? The clothing, she's talking about the clothing line. And Bryanna said, well, it worked. It was okay. Westmoreland said, no, it didn't work. Didn't you say that it was because of Beyonce and Rihanna? Now this is commentary. Cassie thought that she was that girl. She thought that she had a little battle between Beyonce and Rihanna back then. She thought that since she was with Diddy and Jay-Z was with Beyonce and Cassie was rubbing elbows with them, that she had competition. Not that she was going to up and leave Diddy to go with Jay-Z because Jay-Z was Beyonce, so that door was no. So Westmoreland said, it wasn't Diddy who held you back. It was your competitors, Diamonds and Stuff Company, and you and Cassie didn't work out right. You couldn't do your job because you were getting high every day, right? Westmoreland said, you and Cassie had your own relationship, right? Bryanna said, yes, we were close. Just and they were saying, Cassie was saying that P. Diddy held her back, kept her from doing things, and she couldn't branch out on her own because he kept her in a small box, kept her from doing things. Now keep in mind, P. Diddy spent a lot of time going elsewhere, and he had a bunch of other girlfriends, doing FOs with, because she wasn't the only one. And she didn't live with him, and she wanted to be a part of his family. Look, if you meet him doing FOs, believe me, you're not going to be a part of the family. You're not going to meet them. You are the side chick, FO chick. Oh, that's something. Okay. Westmore said, "Are you and Cassie had your own relationship, right?" Bryanna said, "Yes, we're close." Westmoreland said, "Are you still friends with Cassie?" Bryanna said, "Yes." "Are you still friends with Dante Nash?" "Yes." "When was the last time you talked to Dante Nash?" Bryanna said, "After he got off the stand." Okay. Westmoreland said, "What did you talk about?" Bryanna said, "Nothing." Westmoreland said, so what did you talk about?" Bryanna said, "He texted me." Westmoreland said, what did you text about?" Bryanna said that he asked for my girlfriend's number. Westmoreland said, "So you didn't mention nothing about the case on or the stand or nothing?" Bryanna said, "No." Westmoreland said, "Have you spoken to Cassie since the trial started?" Bryanna said, "I don't remember. What do you mean?" Westmoreland said, "Have you spoken to Cassie since the trial started?" She asked her 3 times, and Bryanna said, "Yes. All that I asked her was how she was doing." Pretend like she didn't understand what she was saying. I sent her I sent a bathtub. I sent her a photo of a bathtub she may like. Westmoreland said, "Okay, so you never talked to Cassie about the case?" Bryanna said, "Well, she texted me today." Miss Westmoreland said, well, what did she say?" Bryanna said, "I didn't respond." Westmoreland said, "You didn't talk about her trial, at all?" Bryanna said, "No." Westmoreland said, "You hired Tyrone Blackburn then you fired him and hired a new lawyer to sue Diddy like Cassie did." Bryanna said, "Yes." Westmoreland said, "So you met with Cassie, you met with the government, and you didn't tell the prosecutors that Diddy threatened you at the photo shoot, and you said that he would eliminate you, right?" Bryanna said, "I thought meeting the government, I thought that was a meet and greet. I didn't know, I didn't want to tell them everything or that all of the information. I thought it was just a meet and greet." She's saying she's meeting with the government, and she thought it was a meet and greet. "Hi, how you doing? Hi, I'm Bryanna Bongolon. Hi, how you doing?" You can't make this stuff up. Let's see if you have any questions. Okay, Westmoreland said, "Did you tell Cassie about your lawsuit?" Bryanna said, "No, no, I didn't tell anyone." Westmoreland said, "Did you talk to Cassie about her lawsuit?" Bryanna said, "Yes. Cassie asked me if she could put me in the lawsuit. I said, no, I didn't. I did that. Something happened at the hotel, but it happened in her apartment, so she was helping her straighten out her story." Westmoreland said, "So you and Cassie discussed what happened?" Commentary. Now, Bryanna is going to be cross-examined by Nicole, and she's a very good lawyer. Bryanna was on the stand saying yes, no. So you cannot control what the defense asks you. So Nicole says, get straight to it. Nicole, did you and Cassie discuss the case? You discussed the balcony incident, and you were going to make a plan that you were discussing it with when you were at the apartment or hotel. True? Bryanna said yes. Nicole said, "Did you and Cassie were discussing the dates? Which dates were the right dates, and who was there? Like Tiffany Red?" Nicole, Bryanna said yes. You told Cassie that she was there, but she didn't recall that. So you had this conversation between 2023 and 2024, right? Yes. Brianna said yes. Nicole said, so you spoke to Cassie before she filed. Brianna said yes. Nicole said, so you and Cassie spoke about dates, location, and who was there. You hired a civil attorney when you had your story right, right? Brianna said yes. That is, yes. It's the way you are asking the questions that make it seem like that I'm lying. Nicole said, when you testified on the 29th that you saw Cassie and Diddy fighting, but you never saw them get physical with each other. Brianna said, no, I didn't see them fight. I didn't see them fighting. Nicole said, so is it true that you told the government that Cassie and Diddy would get into knife fights all the time? Brianna said, I don't remember. Nicole said, so you mean to say that Diddy will come and bang on the door and he comes in and you didn't know how? When he did come in, that he would chuck a knife at Cassie, and then Cassie would chuck it back, and then he'd go home and you stay there feeling safe? Nicole said, and she goes on. She said, so you told the government that Diddy walked up to you and said that he's the devil. You said that it was at the photo shoot. Do you remember what you told the government that Diddy said at that party? Brianna said, I don't remember. Nicole said, did you know that when you sit with the government, you have to have that they have a note taker, right? So that's as far as I got. Oh my goodness. Wait a minute, do I have anything else? Okay, wow, that was 17 pages. So that was a lot of testimony just to write this for her. And I gotta say, looking at it, I'm like, I don't know what's true or not, because when she had the lawyer, Tyrone Blackburn, he said he grabbed her by the chest and pushed her up and grabbed her by the waist and had her over the ledge, and she's so high that she had confidence and he threw her. It's crazy. But the interesting thing about it was that she never corrected the record. She never did. So when they're saying that all this knife fights and all this other stuff, she never said that's not true. She never said it. In my belief, by that being out there, it's going to hurt her case. It's going to hurt her case real bad because she never protected it. Oh my goodness, this is so much. I think that Bryanna was a better witness for the defense. I mean, I'm just like, it's wild. It's really wild. But I want to make sure that I gave you intel info on this part. And I'm looking into other parts. Oh, I got to find another way of doing this. I got to find another way. This 17 pages of notes is a lot. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that that Bryanna Bongolon was a not a good that she helped Diddy more than she helped the government. And what are your thoughts? Oh, please like. Wait a minute. So please and like and subscribe and leave a comment.